Start game now. Welcome, retro fans, to another edition of the No Swear Gamer. Time to bust out your calculators, because today we're going to look at Math Grand Prix for the Atari 2600 video computer system. Originally, I believe it came out in 1982, but my copy has a 1987 date on it, so it's a re-release. Very interesting that they re-released it when the Nintendo Entertainment System was gaining some big-time popularity. I guess they thought that Math Grand Prix was the best competitor for Super Mario. Well, I don't know about that. It is an edutainment game, and judging by the faces of these kids, it is a very exciting edutainment game. I really dig Atari 2600 box art. This one's no exception. I like the cars and the kind of the glowing street of math problems. Gives you a little bit of idea what the game is. Don't know why it is that just about every kid on Atari 2600 game has just the most ecstatic faces or just most satisfying faces that there are. I guess every Atari 2600 game is a winner. Let's find out if this one is worth the smiles or not as we pop this into my Atari 7800 system. So let's go ahead and go to the game. Grand Prix is a French phrase that either means grand price or big prize, but this is the States and we speak English. So Math Grand Prix is from 1982, and it is a 1 or 2 player edutainment racing game where your goal is to win a one-on-one F1 race by solving math equations. There are 2 cars in this game. The first car, which is always going to be the first player car, is the red Republican car, and because Republicans worked hard to earn where they get to go first. The second car is the Democratic blue car, and for some reason when the computer controls the Democratic blue car, they always get the question right. It's almost as if there's some political shenanigans going on. And just like most of real life when it comes to politics, the independent white car is left out in the cold and not allowed to participate. When you start the game, you are put on a map. The map is always the same, and you're given a choice. You can either pick 2 spaces or 3 spaces to move. It's kind of like a board game, except it's very difficult to judge where the spaces are when you first play the game. There are no space markers. If you choose a 2-space question, your question will be easier than if you choose a 3-space question. If you do not get your problem right, you will not get to move any spaces at all. There are 3 different variations, and every variation has 3 different modes. So basically you have 3 variations of addition and subtraction problems you can choose, where the first variation is easy and the last variation is the more difficult. You also have 3 variations of multiplication and division problems, and then you have 3 variations where they combine them all, and again with 3 different difficulties. So 9 total variations that either 1 player or 2 players can do. On the track, there's also various icons you can land on. There is a big X where if you land on that, you get to take an extra turn. There's also something that kind of looks like a green candle. If you land on that, it will activate a spinner, which will randomly award you a certain number of spaces from 1 to 4. I don't believe the action button does anything during this time. It simply just stops at random and tells you how many spaces you got. When you do get a problem, you do use your joystick controller to decide on what answer you want to input. You always start typically with the first digit. So if your answer was 10, you would start with putting the 1 in first, then you move over to the side and you push up or down to select your next digit. And once you have the number that you want, you hit the fire button to find out if you're correct or not. There is also an upside down U icon on the track that protects you from crashing, because in this game you can crash at least once you pass the first intersection. Once you pass the first intersection, if you or the car behind you rolls the exact number that the other car in front of them are on, you will crash the other victim out of bounds, and they will now basically have to wait a turn. When it comes back to them, they can try and solve a 2-space problem to get back on the track, but if they don't get it right, they will have to miss another turn as well. So you have to be very careful with Math Grand Prix, because if you are slightly ahead of your opponent and they can easily overcome you, it will actually put you in danger. So there's a little bit of strategy involved in this game. The graphics of this game are pretty bad even by Atari standards, but the cars do look okay. The icons on the track I think look pretty terrible. I think they could have done a much better job telling you what they are. At the end of the track, there's also a series of steps icons where if you land on that, you have to guess a 3-space question, and if you do that before the other player, you win the track. The sound and music is also limited and not very impressive. This is a very family-friendly game. Of course, I'm sure there's many parents who bought this just to help edutain their children. On eBay, copies are very affordable. Loose copies go for $4 to $5, and that includes free shipping typically. And complete copies, I only found one that sold, and it sold for $12. So I'm guessing that you can easily get a complete copy for $10 to $15. However, there wasn't a lot of examples of this on eBay. It doesn't seem like a game that comes up too often, so it is a little bit more scarcer than your average Atari game, but at the same time, it's not very much in demand. So overall, would I recommend this game? Well, interestingly enough, I find this to be a pretty good edutainment game. It's not, the greatest thing ever, but it is a game that I would rather play than doing homework if I was a kid. It is aimed at grade school kids, but some of the higher division and multiplication problems, which involve 3-digit numbers, can get pretty high. It's not just your standard fare where you go up to your 12 times table. It actually goes beyond that. So yeah, it can be challenging at times. I am pretty good at math. I got just about every question I did right. There was 2 I got wrong, one because I just wanted to see what would happen, and the other one I got wrong just because I was getting lazy and misread the question and was too hasty in inputting my answer. But overall, I really enjoyed the kind of board game aspect of this game. I do wish it was easier to tell the spaces apart, but it does offer some strategy once you get a hold of this game. I think there are many people out there who didn't like the game because they didn't understand how to properly play it, just like a game such as E.T. But if you get a firm grasp on it, it is a pretty entertaining game. As a matter of fact, Ferg on the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast in his latest episode mentioned that this is basically a turn-based strategy game because you take turns and there is strategy involved, and I totally agree. Now, I did win just about every game that I played. I think there was one time where I lost the game, but it wasn't always a given, and I did have to incorporate some thinking as far as, okay, do I want to let the car pass me so I try and catch up to him? And I also like the random aspect of the icons, like the spinner. Like, what am I going to get? Is it going to put me out of reach or put me in danger? So very interesting, but it is, for an edutainment game, it's not too bad. So would I recommend it? I wouldn't go out of my way for it, but I would recommend that if you end up getting this in a lot of games, like let's say you buy a group of like 10 or 20 Atari 2600 games and it's just laying in there, don't dismiss it. Give it a try. You might be entertained, especially if you're halfway decent at math. I don't think it's going to make someone who hates math like math, but I do think for someone who's a math nerd kind of like myself, you might get some entertainment out of it, so give it a try. So where am I going to rank it? Well, I'm now at 10 games, and this is kind of a middle-of-the-road game. It is a game I could see myself playing again. I'm not going to go out of my way to play it again, but, maybe one day I might pop it in again. So I'm going to put it ahead of Lock and Chase and make it my new number 6 game. Lock and Chase is a game where, even though it was well made, I just really didn't dig it. I didn't like the locking mechanism of the mazes. I enjoyed Pac-Man a lot better with the power pellet, so I'm going to sandwich it in between there at the number 6 spot. I do want to give a shout out to Ferg and the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast. If you want to learn more about this game and basic math on the Atari 2600, and who doesn't, go ahead and check out episode 80 of the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast. You can get that on iTunes. He's also on Facebook and Twitter, and he is a member of the Retro Junkies Network, as am I, and you can find out more about the Retro Junkies by following them both on Facebook and Twitter. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Just go to either one and search for The No Swear Gamer, and you should find me rather easily. Anyways, guys, I hope you had some fun learning something today, and I look forward to seeing you next time right here on The No Swear Gamer. Take care, everybody.